impressions, unless the walkway was located significantly behind those things on the private property, which would really be kind of in the middle of the front yards of the units. So looking at that, we felt that it was particularly challenging on this site to try to provide that facility. If the planning commission feels really strongly about that, that's something that can always be added as a condition, but it would probably require a pretty significant reconfiguration of the lots. There might need to be a widening of the street, or that compress some of the lots. It would definitely be a major change.
Looking at the number of properties on that private road, and considering maybe a couple children per household, it should be a little bit wide. The street should be a little bit wider to give them some, playroom, or have some sidewalks over there so they can walk around safely. That's one of the things that really bothers me about this.
Respond to that as well, Zach? Yeah, I think that's an important neighborhood character issue as well. When in our meetings with the neighbors, we learned that the absence of sidewalks throughout the neighborhood expresses an element of character that folks want to preserve. And our initial proposal for Cordilleras was to have no sidewalks, which is one reason also that explains why we perceive relatively large setbacks here. But there is sort of a codicil in the annexation of the property to Sunnyvale that requires us to do a full sidewalk on Cordilleras. So that the absence of the sidewalk on a private street relates to that issue and neighborhood character preservation.
Okay, I want to say thank you to you guys first for doing a lot of outreach to the neighborhoods and stuff. I was involved in the Trinity stuff, and I think you guys are doing great here. And I really like the idea of around the edges, the single-story family home, again, related to how Trinity went and stuff like that. Yeah, I did want to touch on sidewalks. So Cordialis doesn't have sidewalks, and I'm assuming. I like the fact there's going to be a sidewalk here, and I don't buy what you're saying about that the nature of the neighborhood dictates that you don't have sidewalks on the private street. I think, I'm having a little bit of a hard time relating walkability of Sunnyvale to however far this is. That somebody who's in plan or house 12, how do they walk to the street? I'm having a hard time relating to that. The lot area, I don't have a problem with. The front setback, you might be able to get me a little bit with house 2 through 5 on being able to be closer to the street. Lot 1, I don't think so. If that's the one, that's the transition house that goes to the rest of what's on Cordialis, and having that one, it looks like you got is the closest to the street. I think that's the one that needs to be back farther, is just my thought on what happens with that. Landscaping, I'm not too worried about it in the back. The stormwater thing, I have a little bit of a concern saying here that lot 5 is the one that's got to bear the brunt of the cost for stormwater management for all those houses. And I don't know why that's a problem not to have an HOA either for those 5 houses, or why it can't just be one big HOA. Just my thoughts. You didn't mention, does this satisfy the parking requirements? How does I only see 5, and you said 6.
It does.
On-street parking here, only 6 on-street parking for what is?
So typically, single-family homes don't require off-site parking. They just require the 2-car garage and the driveway, which all of the homes provide. But if it's a street with limited on-street parking, then there's a recommendation that a percentage per home of a space be provided on the street, and this does meet the recommendation.
So if these are all full, where do visitors park?
Visitors could park on the street.
But when these are all full,
Oh, they'd have to park in the driveway or find another public street.
so they park on Cordialis. And Cordialis is the
Or
closest,
the street, towards you.
Oxbow.
Oxbow,
which is another little court, if I
as
remember.
a public street.
But it's a public street. But it is, that's the little court.
It's a little court. I don't recall that one.
Yeah, and then back on the, I prefer to see some kind of walkway, even if it's, you change the paving along the edge of the street, so that somebody would know to walk, and, people would there, maybe kind of give somebody a little space, but have something to kind of deal with that. And then maybe this is part of the stormwater management stuff, but we just had a study session or something that was about stormwater management and permeable surfaces and stuff like that, and does this meet all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. And then just, yeah, my last thing on the front setback, if there's gonna be a deviation, and I know there's already one being discussed because of the parking here on the private street, I'd rather see the deviation for setbacks be on the private street side, not the Cordial side. But those are my quick comments.
Great, okay, so I'll go next. I also wanted to say, good job to Classic Communities for your community outreach. We just had a property over on Fair Oaks that got a gold star for community outreach, and that made things a lot easier for the planning commission and for city council in terms of their final approval. So I wanna encourage you to keep doing that, and working with the neighborhood. What I always look for in applications like this is, with regards to a smooth transition of the new property versus the existing neighborhood, and I think there are a lot of positive things that we're starting to see with regards to the single, one-story properties around the periphery, with the two-story things being held for the middle of the development. So that's one example of something that I really like. I also like to spend some time thinking about the logic behind the request for the zoning code change. And I heard you when you said, Maria, that there was sort of a complicated story behind how we got where we are, but my request would be if you can just spell that out as best you can in the staff report and help me as a commissioner connect the dots as to why a zoning code change makes sense on this particular application. I'll just rattle off a couple of other things that I'll be looking for in the staff report. You don't have to respond right now, but I'll spend some time looking at traffic flow in terms of pedestrian, bike, and auto flow for 5 new driveways on Cordilleras, especially the one at the corner of Fremont and Cordilleras. And then that we're gonna have, 10 odd new houses on the private street that will be generating auto, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic off of the private street onto Fremont. And so I'll just wanna see that addressed as part of the staff report. I'll be looking for that. And let me just see if I had anything else in my notes here. I do not, so that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Just have a few more minutes.
Yeah, okay, so quickly, I like the idea of perhaps paving the edge of the street to create a walkway. I would be concerned about making the private street too wide because that can become a raceway. But some kind of demarcation on the side of the road might make it feel narrower and provide some traffic calming as well. I am concerned about the corner lot being responsible for the stormwater management system. If they can't afford to maintain it, or if they choose not to or don't understand it, it seems like that could become a mess in the future. And so I'd prefer to see some more organized way of taking care of that. And I share the concerns about the front setbacks and wanting to transition better into the neighborhood. And I think it seems like these homes are closer together than other homes further up on Cordilleras, and so if they're also closer to the street, I think that could create too big of a block of homes right on the entrance. So if we can have a bit more setback, might be good.
So, I want to find out one thing is, so my understanding is there must be a use permit. I'm trying to understand the history of the site, and so it has a residential zoning, but it has a use that is assembly use.
Right, you can, the use permit, you can have a place of worship in a residential zone.
So there is potential of, what I see is, in a way, it is a mixed use right now. I mean, in the scheme of things, and we're using a mixed use, and we're having more residences. I understand it's totally okay to have that, but the question is, if we keep using, my understanding is there's schools being run, there'll be daycares being run, and in that sense, it becomes a mixed use for the community, and there is some benefit to the community at large, and I see a loss in that respect when I see this project, and I just feel as a on a community level, I feel there is some loss. And other things is, I would just resonate with my commissioners as a project, the setbacks. And also I was concerned about if it doesn't have an HOA, then if there's a remodel for those houses, are they gonna be coming to the city? Those would be other concerns, because they're already off of whatever standards, so how does that get addressed in the future?
Let me just point out on the place of worship, we did an analysis a few years ago, sharing that same concern that, there are limited sites for places of assembly in the city, and, residentially zoned properties over 4 acres were rezoned to public facility to help preserve those. This lot was examined but not rezoned because it was under that threshold.
Thank you.
Can I chime in with one other question? Please, I know we're short on time. Maria, could you just put in one other paragraph maybe on the staff report? I've heard a couple of times there seems to be an annexation story about sidewalks, and I'd just like a paragraph that spells out what that is all about and how it may impact this application. Thank you.
And I just like to understand, it looks like the house that's on Cordelia is next to the church property. Is that like a 0 lot line? It's like the house goes right up to the property line. Is that the way I'm looking at that?
On Corridors?
Yeah.
Just
end
the
house?
one next to Plan One.
Yeah.
It may just be the photo, but we can take a look. at
Okay,
the setback.
I'd just like to understand. Thanks.
Should we move to the next
Yeah,
item?
probably.
Could you pass it again?